we continue with our sun salutation variation. Resetting with a breath in mountain pose. Choose to join as you're ready. Inhale to reach up. And hinge at the hips as you fold halfway. Lengthen your spine and your legs. Choose to stay or forward fold. Reach for the floor. Inhale, half lift. Lengthen your spine, lengthen your legs. Lower your hips to sit in your chair pose. Choose to step back to warrior one and let the rest of us meet you there. Or join me for a vinyasa as you dive forward for a fold, reaching up with your hips. Plant both hands, stepping back for high or low plank. Keep elbows close as you lower to your belly. Inhale for baby cobra. Option to press into both hands, extending the elbows. And press into the tops of the feet to skim the knees off the mat as well. Another variation might be to tuck the toes to do the same. Activate the glutes. Notice the length of the belly here. Drop the shoulders away from your ears. We'll all meet on our bellies if you're here for the vinyasa. Pressing into both handprints, you might choose child's pose as you send your hips towards your heels. Option to tuck the toes, maybe leaning onto your elbows and forearms. And maybe send your hips towards the sky for downward facing dog. Option to lift one foot with a big breath in, three-legged dog. Choose to step forward as you exhale. Ground your foot, maybe between your hands, all bodies different shapes. You might step the back foot in and send the toes out, setting your foundation before rising with your heart. Take a breath in with hands at heart center. Choose to stay here. Make any adjustments needed. Option to lift your hands toward the sky, like receiving a big basket. Turn your palms upward, let your elbows rotate inward. Notice how this changes your shoulders. As you're ready, stay here if you're not coming along for the vinyasa, but if you are, you may float your hands to the floor. Untuck the back heel. Step back for high or low plank. Keep elbows close, lower to your belly. Inhale for cobra or maybe up dog. Lower to your belly. Tuck your toes, big breath in for child's pose, tabletop or downward facing dog. Option to lift the other foot this time, being mindful of anything in your space. Bringing the knee toward the nose. Maybe the foot steps towards or between the hands. Bringing the back foot in and sending it towards the outer edge of the mat as the toes toggle outward as well. You set your foundation, maybe unhinge at the hips. And bring your hands to heart center. Or choose to reach up for that imaginary basket. Lengthen your whole leg behind you. Use it like a rudder to align your hips towards the short front edge of your mat. Choose to stay here and breathe, or join me for a vinyasa if you'd like the warmth. We'll all meet in mountain pose momentarily. For a vinyasa, choose to float your hands to the mat. Plant them as well as the toes behind you as the heel lifts. From the front foot to the sky, three-legged dog. Float the lifted foot to meet its mate on the mat. Shift your shoulders forward for high plank. Option to lower the knees and untuck the toes. Keep elbows close as you lower to your belly through chaturanga. Inhale for cobra or up dog. And peel down to the mat. Preparing for downward facing dog. Tuck your toes, ground your handprints, squeeze your elbows towards center. Maybe send hips towards your heels for child's pose. When you're ready, unwind, press into feet and hands as you lift your hips, finding downward facing dog. Walk hands and feet to meet for forward fold. Let your feet take the weight, maybe bending your knees, lifting your tails, your hands leave the mat, maybe reaching for opposite elbows. Continue to breathe as you hang your head, maybe nodding yes. Root to rise as you press into both feet, dangling your hands, roll up through one vertebrae at a time. Finding your strong mountain pose and standing. Take 3 to 5 nourishing breaths here. You may choose to place one or both hands on your heart. Notice its pace. Maybe appreciate the good work you've done so far. Notice any warmth you've created in your body. Decide if you're ready for a little bit of strong balancing and inversion poses from here. If so, I invite you to prepare for standing splits. If you have them, again, you may stack books for little platforms for your hands, maybe in the top quadrant or third of your mat. Yoga blocks work great on their tallest setting if you have access to some today. And stepping back to look down at your blocks or other platform, you may place your feet on imaginary railroad tracks. Notice your posture points as you grow tall in mountain pose. Let's take 3 breaths in, incorporating the arms, reaching up, connecting the handprints perhaps, slicing through center towards the heart, like lowering hands through an elevator as we exhale. We'll do that again, lifting the hands on a breath in, and lowering the hands to the heart on a breath out. One more time, big breath in, big breath out. Hopefully feeling a little regulated before this inversion, which means we bring the head below the hips. You may choose to hinge at the hips. You can bend at the knees as much as you'd like as you reach for the tops of your blocks or platforms and use them like stilts, maybe placing fingertips or whole handprints there. And you can step your feet where they'd like to go from there. And this is enough. You may take a moment or several breaths to notice the backs of both legs as they grow long. Imagine rooting both feet into the earth as you lift your hips like strong tree trunks. Imagine tearing the mat in half from left to right. And then imagine bunching it up in the center from left to right. You lift your toes as you breathe in. And can you ground each toe print as you breathe out? Choose to bend one knee as you lengthen the other. Activating the IT band, you may notice some sensation on the outside of the hip. Choose to pedal your heels as you lengthen the bent knee and bend the lengthened one. Going long through both legs, you may choose to hinge more at your hips, allowing your heart and head to be heavy towards the floor. Notice if your arms are already bent, you may choose to lower the setting of your blocks or remove books from your stack. And when you feel you have good support under both handprints, you may choose to move your weight into one footprint as the other hovers above the mat, maybe bending at the knee. Begin to lift that footprint towards the sky as you bend the knee behind you. You might do some little pumps here, lifting and bending, lifting the footprint, bending the knee. This is great work. You may notice the length of the standing leg. You may think about reaching that lifted heel towards the sky. And this is your standing splits. Also, I invite you to notice the toes of your lifted foot and continue to point them towards the floor. Okay, so not turning them out to the side, which is a little bit of a cheat or a hack, but we're going to turn them towards the floor. So internal rotation with that lifted femur as we lift the heel towards the sky. It doesn't have to be a perfect straight line. That's why we have support under our hands, because we're doing a lot of different work here. When you're ready, bring that footprint to the floor to meet its mate. Root to rise as you roll up to standing. Maybe pedal out your knees, shake your hips. Notice any sensation or difference between sides. And if that felt okay, choose to come along for the other side. Knowing what you know, you can set yourself up for success. Maybe pausing in your mountain pose, taking a big breath. As you're ready, hinge at your hips. Bend your knees as much as you'd like as you reach for your support. Step your feet to a place that feels cozy after you're hinged and connected with your handprint platforms. And just as we did before, we'll shift our weight into the other standing foot as the other foot rises, bending at the knee. Maybe you lift that footprint towards the sky as your crown lowers towards the floor. Might choose to bend the knee and lift the foot, taking several pumps here, remembering you can change the height of your platforms under your hands at any time. This is good work. Continue this way. Or choose to reach up with that heel towards the sky as you flex those toenails towards your shin and point them toward the floor. Beautiful standing splits. When you're ready, bring your foot to the floor. Let both feet take equal weight, root to rise, roll up to standing mountain pose for one more tall, nourishing breath. Maybe reaching up towards the sky. You might take opposite wrist in hand and reach towards one side, growing long from both grounded footprints through your reaching hands and move through what I call 12 o'clock, maybe lower shoulders from ears as you change the grip of one wrist in the other hand and reach toward the other side. Again, rooting through both footprints and reaching. Think about fanning out the rib cage as you lift that armpit towards the sky, return to center, continue to breathe. Nice work. All right. Got one more inversion for you, hopefully a little more straightforward. Again, if you have those platforms available, whether they be stacked books, pillows, bolsters, yoga blocks, I invite you to bring them maybe to kind of the center of your long mat. We're going to turn to face one of the long edges of the mat. And from there, you might make lots of space between both footprints. As I mentioned before, it can be nice to have a wall nearby for extra support, especially as we go upside down. It can be nice to know that there's something there to catch us, that we're not going to fall down. So bear that in mind. You may choose to set up your mat alongside a wall for this exercise. And maybe your footprints are in parallel as though on those railroad tracks, or maybe your heels come a little farther out, sending your toes towards center a little more. Might feel different for you than it does for me. Reach back with your hips as you hinge in your hip creases and bring your platforms under both handprints under your shoulders. And this is great. You can stay right here and notice the length of the back of both legs. Notice the length of the inseam. Think about reaching back with the hip points. Can you notice your whole footprints connected to the floor? And as we did in standing splits, you may notice it's helpful after a few breaths to lower the height of your hand platforms. Tucking your chin may lengthen the cervical spine, the back of the neck, letting the crown be heavy towards the floor. And keep reaching up and back with your hips, maybe folding more and more if it feels safe for you today. Maybe lowering your platforms even more or coming onto your elbows. Just a wide-legged fold. Can you sustain this for 3 to 5 nourishing breaths? Long breath in. You can still bend the knees if they'd like to here, letting them reach forward just like the toes. Notice the sound of your voice as your breath moves in and out through nose and mouth. And you don't need to wait for my permission. Whenever you're ready to come up, be easy with yourself. Coming out the way you came in, offering yourself support, maybe lifting the platforms under your hands. Maybe turning toes outward and bringing heels toward center. You could heel toe your feet together toward the center. And from here, maybe root to rise, rolling up through your spine, turning thumbs outward for tall mountain pose one last time. Big breath here from toes to nose.